the Western Livestock Price Insurance Program, the calf insurance policies, to June 18th, 2020. The deadline to enroll in crop insurance was also extended without penalty to April 13th, 2020. This year, the average crop insurance coverage is the second highest in the history of the program at $224 per acre, only slightly decreasing from the $230 per acre in 2019. The average per acre coverage is determined based on prices set by the federal government. Crop insurance customers will pay an average premium of $7.40 per acre, down from the $8.61 in 2019. This represents a 14% decrease in the average premium producers will pay compared to 2019. Changes to crop insurance introduced for the 2020 year will help ensure the program is meeting the risk management needs of our evolving agriculture industry. With this year's program, the insurable region for soybeans is expanding to the entire province. Soybeans have become a successful crop here in the province of Saskatchewan. Since first insuring soybeans in 2010, Saskatchewan Crop Insurance Corporation now has several years of customer production information with this crop. Crop insurance coverage for soybean producers will now be based on the producer's personal yield history instead of the regional averages. Their experience discount or surcharge will apply to the premiums for soybean crops. Irrigation coverage is also now available for soybean producers. We are also making changes to benefit the vegetable farmers. The Vegetable Acreage Loss Insurance Program provides coverage for vegetable growers and market gardens here in the province of Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan Crop Insurance Corporation is changing the insured value of vegetable crops to better reflect production costs. Additionally, to allow for a longer growing season before harvest begins, fall cutoff dates will be extended. Asparagus has also been added as an eligible crop. Another change is for customers who are looking to return to the crop insurance program. For returning customers, producers now have up to 7 years to rejoin the program to continue with their previous premium discount or surcharge and yields. From crop insurance, agri-stability, Western Livestock Price Insurance, to the wildlife damage compensation programs, all of our programs work together to provide producers with protection against the unexpected. As I noted a few minutes ago, the Government of Saskatchewan will also continue to invest $71.2 million in strategic programming through Canadian Agriculture Partnership in the 6 priority areas that I mentioned earlier. The biggest percentage is going to agriculture research and technology transfer, an area that will see a $1 million increase as we continue to invest in research that will benefit the producers. The largest research program is the Agriculture Development Fund, or the ADF. Environmental and climate change programs include the Farm and Ranch Water Infrastructure Program, the Farm Stewardship Program, and irrigation programming. The risk management areas includes our programs for crops and livestock disease surveillance and our pest control programs, which are administered by the Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities. Value-added programs include our Saskatchewan Lean Improvement in Manufacturing program and product development and marketing assistance offered through our Product to Market program. Public trust programming includes farm safety programming, ag awareness initiatives, and youth development and leadership programs. This includes the Next Gen Ag Mentorship Program administered by Canadian Western Agribition. The Next Gen Ag Mentorship Program pairs young Saskatchewan agriculture professionals and producers with mentors who provide guidance, motivation, and resources to their mentees. In 2020 was the second year for the Ag Mentorship Program. The program is supported through a $100,000 commitment made in 2018 by the governments of Canada and Saskatchewan. Trade and market development funding is used to support industry in trade and government-related activities that support market access, market development, and trade advocacy. While COVID-19 has impacted the uptake of some of our CAP programming in the short term, we continue to see strong participation in many of the CAP programs. We are also already starting to look ahead to the development of the next federal provincial framework CAP after CAP expires in 2023. We will continue to work closely with industry to ensure the next suite of programs meets the needs of Saskatchewan producers and agribusiness. This budget also maintains support for industry organizations with funding for groups that include Ag in the Classroom Saskatchewan, Saskatchewan 4-H Council, and the Regina Mobile Crisis, among others. We value the work of our partner organizations and look forward to continuing our relationship with all of them. Agriculture will be an integral part of Saskatchewan's future economic success. Supporting our producers remains a priority for this government, and the investments announced in this budget will help ensure that the agriculture sector remains strong. I want to thank you, Madam Chair, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Minister. And now I'll open the floor to questions from members, and I'll recognize Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your remarks, Mr. Minister. In your opening remarks, you mentioned several trips internationally there. Were those all of the out-of-province trips that you took as minister in the past year, or were there others?
Those were the out-of-country trips. There would have been two FPT meetings that I would have went to. One was in Quebec and another one was in Ottawa. That would have been the only other trips.
And what's expected in this year for travel in terms of out-of-province?
Those we haven't determined those at this time. I can just say that the trips have showed some good discussions with companies from around the world. Yeah, sorry. There will be an FPT meeting coming up in October.
What's that acronym stand for?
Federal, Provincial, Territory Ministers, First Ministers, or Ministers.
For any of the out-of-province trips that you took in the past fiscal year, did you fly first class or business class in any of those?
Yeah, I did forget one trip too. The Tri-National was in Winnipeg, and we went to that as well. So on the overseas flights, it's government policy that you fly business class when it's over. I think it's, I could stand to be corrected. I think it's 9 hours or something like that. And the flights were like 11 to 13 hours. So that's how you fly.
How many staff accompanied you on the international trips?
2, my deputy minister and my chief of staff.
Does the cost of the annual agribition reception that's held up in the Rotunda, does that come out of the Ministry of Agriculture's budget?
Yeah, it comes out of our communication budget.
And I'm assuming while you're looking things up, you can provide me with the cost of what that was last year?
Rick Burton, Deputy Minister of Agriculture. We will get that number before we're done. We just don't have it with us right now, but we'll find it.
While you're looking up that, or maybe you know, I guess I'm wondering what's the criteria when the ministry selects invitees to that reception?
So the cost for the 1920 event was $13,812, and the invitation list is derived from the sponsors list that is supplied to the ministry from Western Canadian Agribition, along with the Canadian Western Agribition's current board members, current board of directors, current and past presidents, longtime sponsors, members of the Canadian Western Agribition's Next Generation Agriculture mentorship program, and some industry stakeholders.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but are there not also a number of members of the Legislative Assembly who are invited to that reception?
Yes, members are invited.
So perhaps you could explain to me by what rationale members of the opposition are not invited to that reception and are in fact told to leave that reception.
I'm totally unaware of this. I didn't know that. If you can refer to me who asked you to leave, but I know it sure wasn't me, and I don't know who told you that.
That would have been Dan Dotremont.
Well, I mean, that was him, I guess, but it sure wasn't me.
Does the ministry pay for any additional receptions of a similar nature for other groups during the year out of its communications budget?
No, the agribition sponsor is the only one we pay for the reception on. Of course, we do sponsor other events, and you know how those funds are used are held by the events coordinating group.
Does the ministry accept that that climate change is impacting Saskatchewan farmers right now?
Yes, we do.
Can you tell me what the ministry is doing to help farmers deal with the effects of climate change?
Thank you. There's a number of things, so I'll read the points that we have here for it. Obviously, we've invested in programs, extension efforts, and research and development to help our agriculture sector in addressing climate change. The Ministry's Agriculture Development Fund has invested over $15 million in climate change mitigation research between the year 2000 and 2019. In cooperation with Fertilizer Canada, the Ministry in 2019 invested roughly $116,000 to demonstrate the 4R practices at 7 agri-arms sites across Saskatchewan. The Canadian Agriculture Partnership, or CAP, Farm Stewardship Program provides funding for 2 beneficial management practices, precision agriculture and seeding marginal land to grass, that introduce greenhouse gas emissions. From April 1st of 2018, the start of CAP, to March 31st of 2020, about $1.86 million has been paid out to producers. Since the beginning of CAP, April 1st, 2018 to March 31st of 2020, $1.19 million has been paid to producers to develop 3,146 acres of irrigation. Irrigation helps to increase producers' resilience to drought. Under CAP, the ministry is proposing to spend $4 million per year on wells, dugouts, and pipelines to the Farm and Ranch Water Infrastructure Program. From April 1st, 2018 to the start of CAP to March 31st of 2020, $8.4 million has been paid out under this program. The province, led by the Ministry of Environment, is currently developing an offset program with potential implementation in 2021. The proposed offset system will provide an opportunity for Saskatchewan producers to earn credits for the agriculture practices they are using to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In contrast, the carbon tax will reduce the profitability of Saskatchewan farmers and make our producers less competitive. The carbon tax on propane and natural gas has meant additional costs to producers who are already enduring significant financial stress during the wet fall of 2019. The province has always raised the issue of the carbon tax on grain drying with my federal counterpart and stressed the need to relieve on the escalating grain drying costs to our producers. Those are the initiatives that we've taken.
So thank you for that list. As I was listening to it, the only one that really seems to result in an impact for individual producers on an individual impact that they're experiencing is the irrigation one. Now, the one that you didn't mention, but I think you'd agree with me that it does factor in, there's crop insurance. I mean, obviously, crop insurance covers a number of weather-related events, and weather factors into climate change. Is there anything other than crop insurance to help compensate producers for climate change-related costs, from weather-related costs from a changing climate, or is it just crop insurance?
Well, really, I think all the business risk management programs look after that, whether it's Ag Stability, Agri-Invest, they all have components and drivers in on that, on the climate change side.
Agri-recovery, if I'm not mistaken, is kind of meant for natural disasters and so on. Does that include weather-related events?
It's probably clearest if I just give you some of the wording that's on the federal website. The focus of ag recovery is to cover the extraordinary costs producers must take on the recovery from a disaster. So extraordinary costs are costs which the producer would not incur under normal circumstances, but which are necessary to mitigate the impact of a disaster and or resume farming operations as quickly as possible following a disaster. Further, agri-recovery is intended to respond to situations where producers do not have the capacity to cover the extraordinary costs, even with the assistance available from other programs.
So does weather constitute a disaster?
Yes, it does, but the last part was pretty important in that if there is other programs that cover the loss, then agri-recovery is not available under the agreement. And agri-recovery, there has to be extraordinary costs involved. So it's not just an income loss because there's other programs that cover that. So it is extraordinary costs.
So if you take, for instance, the extreme rainfall that areas like Lipton had last fall during harvest, I think in some cases exceeding 20 inches of rain, it strikes me that that's a pretty extreme weather event, a disaster for those producers, and my understanding is that loss was not covered by crop insurance because crop insurance doesn't deal with individual fields. So why wouldn't agri-recovery be triggered for an event like that?
No. Oh. Hello, Sean Jakes, President and CEO of SAS Crop Insurance. So the reason what had happened around Lipton area last fall wouldn't be covered is we have the existing business risk management programs like crop insurance. We cover for, a loss in yield and loss in quality. So those are losses that are insurable. If producers have a reduced income because of the tough harvest or additional expenses, Ag Stability is designed to cover that off.
So while we're on the topic of Ag Stability, I notice in the estimates that there's quite a significant reduction expected in the cost of Ag Stability. And as I understand the Deputy Minister of Finance's explanation, that's primarily driven by lower projected participation rates.
Oh,
So the forecast is based on a federal forecast, and we will get an updated forecast partway through this year. But it takes into account participation rates and projected prices, and there's a model that projected prices and production, and that determines the forecast for each province.
What's the biggest factor driving the 44% decrease in agri-stability costs this year?
Mr. Merritt, you are welcome to bring any official into the mic, and they can leave again afterwards. So feel free to use the mic with your officials.
Sean Jakes, SAS Crop Insurance. So when the federal government works on these estimates, they would factor for 2020, they would base it on an average year, average prices and kind of average production. 19 was higher because they were factoring in what they thought would maybe be a larger impact from trade issues. So that's why we get an updated one later in the year, once we know what's going on.
So my understanding is that at this point, fewer than 50% of farmers are actually enrolled in agri-stability. A number of farm groups have called for some changes to agri-stability, particularly asking that the reference margins be increased or eliminated completely. Has the ministry looked at doing that?
Yeah, on the participation rate, the number is actually it's over 51% of eligible cash receipts of participation in the program. On any changes to a federal program, and these discussions are ongoing, they have been since I've been given the privilege to be the Ag Minister at the FPT table to have these discussions about changes. But there's quite a process that has to happen before any changes can happen. First of all, you have to have 7 out of 10 provinces to agree to any changes whatsoever. You can't initiate any change on your own. You have to have 7 out of 10 to make changes to the program.
My understanding is that some provinces have actually decided to unilaterally make changes. So why can they do that and Saskatchewan not?
They can do it, but only on their participation level, not on the federal participation at all. So only on theirs.
Okay. So has the ministry looked at doing that for Saskatchewan?
Well, first and foremost, we really do respect the process of working with our counterparts across the country for changes that we, do want or make or that are being looked at. The other part of it is, quite frankly, is the provinces that have made changes. The agriculture industry is a very small portion of their population or tax base, whatever you want to call it. Here in the province of Saskatchewan, it's a huge portion for us. So when over 40% of the arable land in all of Canada is in this province, changes like that are significant.
As I recall, I think it was at the APAS convention in December, you made comments similar to that effect, and I think you had some numbers, talking about how much it would cost the provincial treasury if the province was to do that. Am I correct in characterizing it that way?
And you're right, I did. I know to remove the reference margin limit, which a lot of the industry is asking for, would cost the province of Saskatchewan in the neighborhood of $20 million, which is significant compared to other jurisdictions by far.
How long is when did that calculation of what that calculation of the number 20 million, when was that done?
It was late last fall, and some of the preliminary numbers were given to us by the federal government.
And that would just be the province's share?
Yes.
So would that be to remove the reference margin completely, or just to bump it up to, I think it was the pre-2013 amount, which was, I think, was it 70 or 75%?
So it's commonly referred to as the reference margin limiting factor. Under the program, the coverage is limited by your historical expenses or the Olympic average of your previous 5 years. And so the reference margin limiting piece, it limits to the lower of the two. That came into place originally in 2013. And then there was some adjustment to limit that a little bit to 70% of your historical margin. And so that would eliminate the reference margin limiting piece, or the factor where you're looking at historical expenses. You would just go back to your traditional Olympic average from the last 5 years.
We kind of got off my train of thought there once we hit agri-stability. So I want to go back to climate change. Does the ministry have calculations for how much CO2 equivalent tons are emitted by agriculture, or would that be Ministry of Environment that has that?
Assistant Deputy Minister. Thank you for the question. Yes, we do have carbon sequestration numbers and emissions for the agriculture sector in Saskatchewan. In the latest report, which I believe was 2018, agriculture sequesters 9.8 million metric tons of carbon in our agricultural practices. And on the emissions side for crops, it's about 11.3 million metric tons, and for livestock, it's about 6.1 million metric tons.
So in other words, we are a net emitter, not sequesterer.
So what is missing from those numbers is the native or prairie grass sequestration numbers. It's not included in those calculations, and we don't have the number for the sequestration for native or prairie grass. We know that it's much larger than the net difference. So if you add that into the calculation, agriculture is generally sequesters more carbon than it emits.
Does the minister do those calculations on an annual basis?
So the Ministry of Agriculture doesn't do those calculations. Those are done by the Environment and Climate Change Canada. We take the numbers from Environment and Climate Change Canada National Inventory Report, which